Hello there, good to see you, and thanks for tuning in to ZNBC TV 1, your public service broadcaster. Today we are discussing a special topic, something to do with human rights, and it's brought to you compliments of the Human Rights Commission. My name is Samuel Machishi. Now, our discussion will definitely be centered around the upcoming Universal Periodic Review of Zambia's human rights record, scheduled for the 13th of November 2017 in Geneva. And this is going to be in areas of awareness about the Bill of Rights in Zambia, and just the importance of making sure that we observe the human rights that we have to enjoy as Zambians. In the studios, we're so happy to have a high-profile panel able to articulate issues to do with human rights in the country. On my immediate left, we do have Madam NAMUCHANA MUSHABATI, Coordinator Access to Justice at the Women in Development in Africa. I hope I've pronounced that one correct.
Yes.
Thank you so much, and indeed, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
And from the Human Rights Commission, we have Mr. Foster HAMUYUBE, Head Research and Planning, Human Rights Commission, Zambia. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you.
Last but not the least, from the United Nations in Zambia this time around, UNFPA, we have the gender analyst, Madam Womba Mayondi. We are so excited that you found time to be with us.
Thank you.
On sign language, we have Obed Mambwe. For starters, let's get to the Human Rights Commission to just get an understanding of the Bill of Rights in Zambia and just why we should be interested as citizens. Mr. Foster, maybe just begin by telling us, why should everyone be able to understand human rights as a topic?
Well, human rights are very important. Human rights are what actually makes us human. You know, if someone today decided that some should be killed, or his right to life should be taken away, essentially then some ceases to exist if that is done, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So the guarantees that are in the Constitution, the guarantees that are in the law, protect us, from people who want to violate those rights. And so essentially those things are what makes us human. The ability of, our ability to associate with those that we want to associate, our ability to speak what we want to speak, our ability to have life, the right to life itself.
I was going through the Bill of Rights before we came here, and I noticed there's quite a lot. For example, there's one thing that's caught my attention. It's about the rights that we have at individual level and household level, where somebody shouldn't just barge into my home. I have the right to privacy.
Yes. And
then I have the right not to be searched until otherwise. It's just a whole lot that the Bill of Rights contains. But when I looked at all those compositions, I realized there's just so little that we know about.
Yeah, I'm glad we started from that point of view, because I think it's important for us to understand the Bill of Rights itself. Though you are saying that actually the Bill of Rights has so much, as the Human Rights Commission, we believe that actually what we have there is not sufficient, because currently our Bill of Rights does not have what we call economic and social cultural rights. It only has one part of the entire Bill of Rights, which is the civil and political rights. What is contained in Article in Part 3 of our Constitution is just one part of what we call what we're supposed to have as a Bill of Rights.
Well, we'll be talking much more about this as we go on. We know that there was the idea of wanting to expand during the 2016 general elections. Before I bring in the others, from your explanation, tell us what's the interest of the Human Rights Commission, and just what is the role of the Human Rights Commission in this case?
Well, the Human Rights Commission is established under Article 230 of our Constitution. And it's given the mandate to ensure that the Bill of Rights is protected and upheld. it's quite a very broad mandate. We are the institution of first call in terms of protecting and promoting human rights in Zambia, mandated under the constitution.
Wow. How's the dissemination of information been going on since your establishment, do you think?
Well, we've tried under difficult circumstances. You know, our institution is quite small. Staffing levels are quite, you know, quite small. But we've worked so hard, such that nowadays actually we hear people complaining that these children nowadays they know so much about their rights that it's becoming difficult for for parents sometimes to discipline them or to do something that they used to do those old days. They would spank them, and so it's not just the young children nowadays who know so much about human rights. I think everybody nowadays knows so much about human rights that we can pride ourselves to say we have done our part. And I think it's not just the Human Rights Commission, but we also think that stakeholders have played a bigger role in this. Civil society, as well as government itself, they have played a bigger part in ensuring that people know so much about rights. Madam
MUSHABATI, I could see you nod your head in agreement that it seems like the situation has improved. As WiLDAF, what's just been your observation in as far as human rights in Zambia are concerned?
Okay, first of all, I would like to say that WiLDAF is a Pan-African organization. And as an organization, we look at the respect for human rights. We promote human rights. So I think for me, the situation of human rights in Zambia really has actually improved because of the different efforts by the different key players. So as an organization, as WiLDAF, we've done our part because we realize that our role is also to complement the efforts by government to ensure that human rights are upheld in the country. So our role has been to work with government to ensure that, I think for sensitizations, we're also part of that to ensure that people actually understand their human rights. I mean, like, these are principles that actually guide how we relate with one another. So it's really important that people actually get to know about what pertains to them.
Yours is an organization that's centered on making sure that women get involved, isn't it?
Yes.
Especially in development issues.
Yes.
What's the words on every woman's lips that's a member and that you've reached out to when it comes to human rights? What are they saying? Okay. They are safe?
Yes. Well, not really. We still have a lot to do, I think, where the promotion of human rights is concerned. I think if people did understand the whole principle about human rights, I think we would have seen reduction in maybe cases of violence and all that, or killings and all that. But the fact that we still have people who think of harming one another, then we know that we still have quite a lot to do. So women understand their human rights, and I think the challenge has been how do you penetrate the other folk, let's say the women folk. You have received information with regards to human rights, and so how do you go home as a woman and tell your husband to say, what I've learned today is this, and how do we communicate? So that has been a bit of a difficult, but I think overall, well, like my colleague has said, I think people do understand their human rights, and women do actually understand.
As we go on, I'd like to find out, most of the time such civil society organizations are perceived to be elitist. I hope you get it. Like they're just for the elite woman in the city, but out there you're not getting down to the people that are supposed to be given because some of them in the city, yes, they have access to information via social media every time people are talking about human rights, but someone that's in the rural, it's very difficult to get to them, and so it would be very difficult for them to get to understand what human rights are all about. Let's get to the UNFPA. Wamba, kindly, we are going to take you on as a gender analyst a little later. But give us, at the level of UNFPA, what have been your observations in terms of human rights?
Well, like my colleagues have rightly pointed out, the human rights agenda in Zambia has been receiving a lot of attention. And seriously speaking, we have made a lot of strides on various aspects of human rights. But coming from UNFPA, our perspective on sexual, reproductive and health rights, we look at it as one of those rights which could easily be invisible, which could easily be forgotten, but it's potentially or essentially the credo of all humanity, if I were to use that word, because at this we should talk about zero maternal deaths. We should talk about zero infant mortality. We should talk about zero unmet need for family planning. If we were to really uphold the rights of women to give life, strictly speaking, the disservice that we could ever have for any human being is to die while giving life. And sometimes some of these deaths are very avoidable. Maybe just the postpartum hemorrhage, you know, somebody hemorrhages, maybe it was the late reporting to the facility, maybe it's the fact that the facility is far. So thinking more around how sexual reproductive health rights can be brought to the forefront, how much more investment can we collectively put into this strand of human rights, which is quite basic and cardinal, but it is also very influential in as far as human dignity and indeed in as far as the right to life is concerned. So I think from the UNFPA perspective, that has continued to be our concern.
How have you been working with stakeholders in Zambia to advance the sensitization, later on just making everyone know they have these rights? I like the word that you've used, invincible rights. Some of these rights may not just be noticed at a glance. You will have to dig deeper to notice you actually have to enjoy this right.
Well, there's a lot of work going on with the health system. So I could safely say here and now that UNFPA is one of the major contributors to Ministry of Health with regards to modern contraceptives, if you like. There's a lot of work around synergies with other partners, especially the civil society organizations, with regards to community awareness, outreach programs. Ministry of Health itself has evolved a lot, and there's a lot of work going on in communities with the community volunteers who do a lot of one-to-one work with the women, with the men. Of course, from a gender perspective, we've been saying a lot about male involvement in family planning and the gains that can be achieved as a country if family planning is really brought to the forefront and we invest a lot in it. Better still, if the whole package of sexual reproductive health rights is brought on board and given the due attention, we know that there are a lot of gains. First of all, health itself would be at a better level, if I were to use that word, and the quality of life would also improve because people may be able to have the number of children that they are able to manage, that they are able to afford to feed. So there's a lot that can be said around SRHR, but all we are saying is that if we were to unpack the whole human rights package, but collectively think around how that each of these aspects of human rights are indivisible, they are important, how can we invest, then I think we'd have a better future for Zambia.
Nice one. Earlier on in my preamble, I did mention that there's a forthcoming UPR on the 13th of November 2016 in Geneva. Mr. Foster, maybe you can just let us know why the periodic review.
Okay, let me start from more, first of all, making viewers understand what the UPR process is all about. The Universal Periodic Review is one of the three key international human rights monitoring mechanisms. Some viewers may understand that we have what we call treaty bodies. We also have what we call special procedures. But of the three, which includes the Universal Periodic Review, the Universal Periodic Review is one of the most recently formulated mechanisms through which the international community monitors the progression of countries in the protecting and respecting human rights. The upcoming review, which is taking place next week, is it the 13th November in Geneva, is the third. We started going for this Universal Periodic Review in 2008. We went there again in 2012. This is the third review. And this review is, because it's the third review, focuses more on the previous reviews and recommendations that were made. Principally, it will be looking more at what countries have done to implement those recommendations that were made during the past reviews. And during this process, during this review, our country will be the focus of attention. They will be looking at the report that they have presented, which they have submitted to the Human Rights Council, explaining some of the steps they have taken to improve human rights in the country. And the other countries now will be asking Zambia to say, you said you have done A, B, C, D. What have you done to improve these aspects of human rights?
From the look of things, Zambia hasn't done badly. You are graded A as Human Rights Commission. What took you to that grade? What has taken us to that grade? For a student to be A+ performing, then it simply means they're on top of their game.
Well, as a national human rights institution, let's not confuse the two. The country and the institution are two different.
Okay.